The grand crystal palace of Valoria shimmered like a mountain of stars, floating above the clouds of a golden world. Its towers were carved from light itself, and its halls were filled with nobles who moved like living jewels. Every creature in the galaxy knew that this was the heart of the Valorian Empire, ancient, proud, and untouchable. And that was where a single human soldier was sent. His name was Elias Ward, 23 years old, from a small blue planet that had only recently joined the Interstellar Alliance. He walked through the shining gates in a simple, dark uniform, his boots heavy on the marble floor. Around him, alien guards stared in quiet disbelief. Humans were rare here, too plain, too fragile, too new to the stars. Elias didn't care about the looks. He had been through wars already. He had seen fear, death, and sacrifice. The whispers of the Valorians didn't scare him. He was here for peace talks, a symbol of unity between their species. Nothing more. But when he entered the throne hall, he felt the air grow cold. Thousands of glowing eyes turned toward him. The nobles were tall and silver-skinned, their faces smooth and flawless, their robes floating around them like waves of starlight. And in the center, upon a throne made of silver fire, sat Princess Saralyn, the 19-year-old heir of Valoria. She was breathtaking. Her hair shimmered like threads of moonlight, and her violet eyes glowed with quiet power. She was young, but already carried the calm authority of a queen. Everyone in the hall bowed when she raised her hand, everyone except the human who only stood still, his expression calm and respectful. For a moment, silence hung in the room like a held breath. Then Saralyn's lips curved into a faint, amused smile. "So this is the human soldier the council speaks of?" she said softly, her voice smooth as crystal. "The one who defended the colony world of Arthen?" Elias bowed his head slightly. "Yes, Your Highness." She studied him with eyes that seemed to see through flesh and bone. Her tone was not unkind, but cold, like someone examining a curious insect. "You are smaller than I expected." A few nobles chuckled quietly. Elias didn't move. "I heard humans are a passionate race," she continued. "Quick to anger, quick to love, and even quicker to die." The laughter grew louder this time. Elias simply stood, his face unreadable. His silence made her frown slightly, as though she found it offensive that a human wouldn't try to please her. "Tell me, soldier," she said, standing from her throne. Her silver robe flowed around her like mist. "What makes your kind so eager to join wars that are far beyond your strength? Do you believe courage can make you equal to us?" The words were soft, but they struck like a blade. Elias met her eyes for the first time. He didn't answer. He didn't bow again. In that moment, something heavy passed between them, pride and pain colliding in the quiet air. Around them, the court waited for his reaction, expecting him to speak, to defend himself, to beg. But Elias did none of that. He simply took one slow step backward, then another. His boots echoed across the marble floor. Without saying a single word, he turned his back to the throne, to the laughter, to the whispers, to the stares, and walked away. The heavy doors of the hall closed behind him with a deep sound like the final beat of a drum. And in the silence that followed, not one noble dared to laugh again. Princess Saralyn stood frozen, staring at the empty space where he had stood. For the first time in her life, someone had turned away from her. Not out of fear, not out of anger, but out of quiet dignity. And though she would never admit it, that silence hurt far more than any insult ever could. The great doors of the throne hall closed with a hollow sound, echoing through the marble corridors long after the human had gone. Inside, silence filled the room. The laughter of the nobles had died away. Even Princess Saralyn, who had spoken so proudly, stood still with an unreadable look on her face. No one had ever dared to walk away from her before. Not a servant, not a general, not a foreign leader. She was the Princess of Valoria. Her word was command, her gaze a blessing. Yet that human soldier had turned his back without saying a single thing. "Such insolence," one noble whispered. Humans have no manners, said another. But Saralyn said nothing. Her violet eyes followed the path where he had walked, her mind strangely unsettled. She told herself it didn't matter, that humans were emotional, unpredictable creatures not worth her attention. And yet she couldn't stop thinking about the look in his eyes. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was disappointment. That quiet expression, more than any insult, had left a scar on her pride. Later that day, she stood on the balcony of her palace, watching the twin suns of Valoria sink beneath the horizon. The sky burned gold and violet. Her heart felt heavy, though she didn't know why. Her advisor, General Corvin, approached behind her. He was old and wise, his armor gleaming with medals of countless battles. "Your Highness," he said, bowing. "The human's behavior was unacceptable. I shall see that he is disciplined." Saralyn's gaze stayed on the horizon. "No, let him be," Corvin frowned. He insulted the royal court by walking away. She turned slightly, her voice calm but distant. "No, General. It was I who insulted him first." The old warrior blinked in surprise. He had never heard humility in her voice before. "You meant no harm, Princess. Humans are delicate. They take words too seriously." But Saralyn wasn't sure. Something about Elias Ward did not fit the image she had of humans. He hadn't reacted with rage or pride. He had simply walked away, like a man who carried heavier burdens than her words could ever add. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept remembering his silence, how his eyes had met hers for one heartbeat before he turned. She had seen something there, a quiet pain, perhaps born from years of fighting wars she could never understand. The next morning, she ordered her guards to find out where the human had gone. They returned hours later with their report. "He has left the palace grounds, Your Highness," said one guard. "He requested transfer to the outer colonies. The front lines against the Dravok." Her heart skipped a beat. "The front lines?" "Yes, Princess. He departed without escort, carrying only a standard rifle. He refused any honors or protection." Saralyn turned away quickly, hiding the sudden emotion rising in her chest. She had seen the reports about the Dravok, a violent alien race spreading through the galaxy like a plague. Even Valorian warriors feared their brutality. Why would he go there alone? For days she tried to push the thought away, but it kept returning. In her quiet moments she found herself thinking of the human's silent retreat. She imagined him walking through battlefields, his eyes tired but steady, his heart too strong for his fragile body. And she wondered if maybe, just maybe, her words had pushed him there. One evening, she found herself in the royal garden. The night air was cool, the flowers glowing softly under moonlight. She looked up at the stars, the same stars humans looked at from their small blue world. Somewhere out there Elias Ward was fighting. She whispered to the wind, though no one could hear her. "Why did you not speak back? Why did you just walk away?" The stars gave no answer. Only the soft hum of the night surrounded her, and for the first time in her life, Princess Saralyn of Valoria felt something she had never known before. Regret. She had insulted him before 1,000 eyes, but now she realized that silence could be the loudest answer of all. The palace of Valoria had never felt so quiet. Days had passed since the human soldier, Elias Ward, had walked out of the throne hall without a word. The echo of his footsteps still haunted the marble corridors. Though he was long gone, Princess Saralyn tried to return to her royal duties, meetings, ceremonies, and lessons in diplomacy, but something inside her felt heavy. Her mind, once clear and proud, was now filled with questions she could not silence. Every time she sat in the same throne where she had mocked him, she remembered his calm eyes. There had been no fear, no hate, only disappointment. It was a look she had never seen before. She didn't understand why it bothered her so much. She had insulted many before, rivals, diplomats, even generals, yet no one's silence had ever left a mark on her heart. But this human, This quiet soldier from a small blue planet had changed something. One evening, as the violet sun dipped behind the palace towers, Saralyn stood by the balcony. The wind played softly with her silver hair. Her thoughts drifted to the words she had said. "Do you believe courage can make you equal to us?" Now those words tasted bitter. She wondered what courage truly meant to him. Humans were new to the stars, but they had fought fiercely beside Valorians against the Dravok invaders. Many had died protecting Valorian colonies. Still, she had called them weak. "Perhaps," she whispered, "I was the weak one." Just then her advisor, General Corvin, entered the balcony. His heavy armor gleamed under the evening light. "Your Highness," he said, bowing slightly. "We received word from the outer colonies." Saralyn turned toward him. "Is it about the human?" Corvin nodded. "Yes, he joined a defensive unit on the moon of Alaris. The fighting there is severe. He refused any backup and volunteered for the most dangerous position, guarding the evacuation routes." Her breath caught. "He went to Alaris alone?" The general nodded again. "He said he needed no protection. He requested no honors. Just orders?" Saralyn stared at the horizon, her hands tightening on the balcony rail. She remembered how easily she had insulted him, and how quickly he had left wordless. Perhaps she had wounded more than his pride. Perhaps she had wounded his belief that peace between their kinds was even possible. She turned back to Corvin. "Send a messenger to the front lines. Tell them to bring him back safely." Corvin hesitated. "Princess, the Dravok are merciless. The front is collapsing. Even Valorian elites are struggling. I'm afraid it may already be too late." His words fell like stones. After he left, Saralyn stood alone for a long time, staring at the stars that shone like cold silver eyes. Each one seemed to whisper his name. Elias Ward, the man who had walked away from her insult without a sound. In her dreams that night she saw him again, standing in the great hall, the light behind him, his back straight, his face unreadable. Then the image changed. She saw him on a burning battlefield alone, fighting while the sky rained fire. His uniform was torn, his eyes still calm. When she awoke, her heart was pounding. She realized it wasn't just guilt that she felt, it was fear. Fear that she might never see him again. The next morning, Saralyn broke protocol. She entered the War Command Center herself, shocking her guards and counselors. "I want all reports from Alaris," she ordered. "Now." Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes were firm. She didn't care what the nobles thought. She didn't care about pride or appearances anymore. Somewhere out there, a human soldier was risking his life while she sat in a palace made of light. And for the first time in her life, Princess Saralyn felt truly small. She didn't know yet that fate was already moving, that the path of the quiet human and the proud princess would soon cross again, in ways neither of them could have imagined. Far away from the shining towers of Valoria, the moon of Alaris burned under a dark sky. Explosions flashed across its surface, and the ground trembled with every strike. The air was thick with smoke and dust, and the screams of soldiers echoed through the wind. Amid the chaos, one man stood alone near the evacuation bay, Elias Ward, the human who had once stood in the royal court of Valoria and walked away in silence. His armor was scratched. His rifle burned from overuse, and blood darkened his sleeve. Yet his movements were calm, steady, and purposeful. Around him, frightened civilians rushed toward the escape ships. Elias moved between them, helping an injured Valorian child to safety, then turning to fire at the advancing Dravok troops. He didn't speak much. He didn't curse or cry out. He simply acted, fast, silent, and precise. Every order he gave was clear and short. "Go, keep running. Don't look back." The Dravok were monsters, tall, armored beasts with red glowing eyes and weapons that screamed like dying stars. They came in waves, endless and merciless. Even Valorian warriors struggled against them. But Elias didn't retreat. He planted his boots in the ash and kept fighting. Hours passed. Reinforcements never came. The defensive lines fell one by one. The evacuation ships lifted off, each one carrying hundreds of survivors. Elias watched the last one rise into the sky. A faint smile crossed his tired face. "They made it," he whispered. He knew what that meant. He was now alone. He reloaded his weapon with trembling hands, the pain in his body growing heavier. He had fought for days with barely any rest. But quitting had never been an option for him. In his earpiece, static crackled. The faint voice of a Valorian soldier still alive somewhere. Human. "Fall back, it's over." Elias pressed the comm switch. "Not yet. Someone has to buy them time." Then he turned toward the smoke-filled valley where the Dravok horde approached. The ground shook beneath their march. He took a deep breath, raised his weapon, and whispered to himself, "Let's make it count." He remembered the princess's words, the insult that had cut deep. "Do you believe courage can make you equal to us?" He smiled faintly, his eyes hard but calm. "No," he murmured to the empty wind. "Courage doesn't make us equal. It just makes us human." The first line of Dravok soldiers appeared over the ridge. Elias fired. The rifle roared and alien bodies fell. He moved like a shadow between fire and smoke, never hesitating, never backing down. Each shot was precise, each step sure. When his ammunition ran out, he picked up an enemy weapon. When that broke, he used a blade. The battle became a blur of pain and flame. His armor cracked, his lungs burned, but he kept standing. Every second he fought was another second for the evacuation ships to reach orbit. By the time the Dravok finally surrounded him, the sky above had turned dark red. Elias dropped to one knee, too weak to move, yet his eyes stayed defiant. He looked up at the burning horizon and whispered softly, "At least, they're safe." The last explosion lit up the sky like dawn. Back on Valoria, deep inside her palace, Princess Saralyn stood before the large holographic map showing the outer colonies. The red light blinking over Alaris suddenly turned black. The communication signal was gone. The room grew silent. Her heart stopped. "Report!" she cried. A young officer swallowed hard. "Transmission lost, Your Highness." "The human, Elias Ward. He stayed behind. We believe he—" "Don't say it," she whispered sharply, her voice breaking. She turned away from them, her hands trembling, her eyes burning with tears she could not hide. The man she had mocked for being weak had faced death alone while protecting her people. And now, he was gone. That night, as the palace lights dimmed, Princess Saralyn stood on her balcony again, staring at the stars. For the first time in her life, the sky felt cold. She pressed her hand to her heart and whispered, "I was wrong about you. Elias Ward, you were stronger than all of us." The palace of Valoria felt different now, quieter, heavier. The laughter and music that once filled its golden halls were gone. Every sound seemed to echo too loudly, as if the walls themselves mourned. It had been 3 days since the last signal from the moon of Alaris. The War Council had confirmed what Princess Saralyn feared most. The human soldier Elias Ward was missing in action. Missing. That was the word they used. But Saralyn knew what it truly meant. She sat alone in her chamber, the curtains closed against the rising sun. A single silver candle burned beside her, its flame flickering with every trembling breath she took. On the table before her lay the last report, a single page with cold words that stabbed at her heart. Human soldier Elias Ward remained on Alaris Moon after evacuation. He delayed the Dravok forces for 6 hours. He is presumed dead. Saralyn read the sentence again and again until the letters blurred behind her tears. She had been raised to believe that honor was found in titles and bloodlines. But that man, that quiet wounded human, had shown her what real honor looked like. He had faced death not for glory, not for reward, but for duty and compassion, and she had insulted him. Her memories haunted her like ghosts. The way she had looked down on him, the words she had spoken before the entire court. "Do you believe courage can make you equal to us?" Now those words echoed in her mind like poison. A soft knock came at the door. "Your Highness," said a guard gently. "The War Archives have brought something you requested." "Bring it in," she whispered. The guard entered, carrying a small holographic recorder, the last transmission from Alaris before the moon went silent. Saralyn dismissed him and pressed the play button with shaking fingers. A blue light flickered to life above the device, and suddenly the room filled with static and smoke. She saw Elias. He was covered in dust and blood, his uniform torn, his face pale but steady. Behind him, the sky burned red with explosions. He held his rifle like it was part of him. His voice was quiet but calm. "Evacuation complete. Civilian safe. Holding position." In the background, a Valorian medic shouted for him to fall back. He didn't listen. He turned to the camera once, as if looking straight into her soul through time. "Tell command, humans don't run." Then the feed cut off into silence. Saralyn sat frozen, her hand over her mouth. Her tears fell freely now, splashing on the table. The candle flame wavered in the wind of her shaking breath. "Why didn't you just leave?" she whispered through tears. "Why didn't you walk away this time?" For hours she couldn't move. When she finally stood, her steps were unsteady, but her eyes were burning with new light, the kind of light that comes from pain and truth. That night, she went to the royal balcony wearing no crown and no jewels. She looked out at the stars, the same stars Elias had seen before he fought his final battle. She spoke softly to the empty sky. "You proved me wrong, human. You showed me what courage truly means. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I promise, your name will not be forgotten." The next morning, she made a royal decree. From that day on, every Valorian academy would teach the story of Elias Ward, the human who defended Alaris. His statue would stand in the Hall of Heroes, not as a servant, but as an equal, a warrior who carried the heart of humanity. When the nobles protested, she silenced them with a single sentence. "He fought for our people when we did not believe in him. That makes him more Valorian than any of us." And as the statue of the human soldier was placed in the center of the hall, the princess stood before it, her eyes filled with tears and pride. She reached out and touched the cold metal hand of the statue, whispering to it as if he could still hear her. "I will make sure they all know who you were. Elias, the one who walked away from pride and walked straight into legend." Weeks passed after the fall of Alaris. The war had moved to other fronts, but Princess Saralyn couldn't move on. Every morning she stood by the palace window, looking toward the distant stars, wondering if somewhere in the cold silence of space, a single trace of the human soldier still remained. The statue of Elias Ward now stood proudly in the Hall of Heroes. Valorian children came to see it, asking questions about the man who had fought alone. Soldiers saluted it before leaving for battle. Yet for Saralyn, the statue wasn't enough. It was a reminder, not of his strength but of her guilt. She wanted to see the place where he had fallen. So, one morning, she made a decision that shocked her advisors. She would personally visit the ruins of Alaris. "Your Highness, it's dangerous," General Corvin protested. "The Dravok may still be near that sector." "I don't care," Saralyn replied softly. "He went there for us. The least I can do is go there for him." And so, without the usual royal escort, she boarded a small starship and set course for the silent moon. When she arrived, the sight took her breath away. The once green plains of Alaris were now gray and lifeless. Blackened craters marked where cities once stood. The air shimmered faintly with leftover radiation. It felt like walking through a graveyard of stars. Saralyn walked slowly through the ruins, her silver robes dragging through the dust. Her guards followed behind, silent and respectful. Every few steps she saw broken helmets, burned banners, shattered weapons, pieces of a battle that had ended in sacrifice. Then, near the ruins of an evacuation beacon, a Valorian scout called out, "Your Highness, over here!" She turned and saw him kneeling beside a piece of metal, half buried in the ash. He lifted it carefully and handed it to her. It was small, dull, and worn, a human dog tag. The letters were faint but clear: Elias Ward. Earth for Saralyn froze. Her fingers tightened around the metal as tears filled her eyes. It was as if the world around her faded away, leaving only that small piece of proof, the last thing he had left behind. She sank to her knees in the dust. The sky above was gray, but her heart felt even heavier. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she pressed the tag to her chest and whispered, "You really were here. You really stayed." Her guards lowered their heads, none daring to interrupt. After a while she stood again, brushing the ash from her hands. Her voice was soft but strong. "Prepare a monument here," she said. "Not just for him, for everyone who fought beside him. This ground will be sacred." When the work began, Sarah Lynn stayed to help. She didn't order or command. She carried stones herself, her royal robes stained with dust. The soldiers watched in silence, their proud princess working like a simple worker, tears falling freely down her face. When the monument was complete, she stood before it and placed the dog tag at its center. The wind blew gently, carrying her words as she spoke. "Elias Ward," she said softly, "you showed us what we forgot. You showed us that strength is not in power or blood, but in heart. You proved that courage is not measured by race or rank, but by what one is willing to stand for." She looked up at the sky, her eyes glistening with sorrow and pride. "From this day," she continued, "I wear your name as my honor." She unclipped her royal sigil, the emblem of her house, and replaced it with his dog tag around her wrist. Gasps echoed among her guards, but she didn't care. "This will remind me," she said quietly, "that even a princess must bow before true courage." And from that day forward, Sarah Lynn refused to wear her crown. Instead, she carried the name of the human who had once walked away in silence, the man whose quiet bravery changed her heart forever. The story of Elias Ward spread through every Valorian world, carried by soldiers and citizens alike. They no longer spoke of humans as fragile. They spoke of them as fire, small, bright, and unstoppable. And when they looked to the stars, they no longer saw humans as outsiders. They saw them as brothers. Years passed after the war ended. The Valorian Empire rebuilt from ashes, their pride tempered by humility. And every year, on the Day of Remembrance, Princess Sarah Lynn visited the monument on Alaris, the place where the human soldier, Elias Ward, had made his final stand. She always stood there quietly, her hand resting on the cold stone, wearing his dog tag around her wrist. The people called it the Day of Fire and Silence. They believed Elias had died protecting a race that once mocked his kind. But Sarah Lynn, she had never truly believed he was gone. Something deep inside her whispered that he was still out there, somewhere beyond the stars. One evening, as twilight bathed the sky in violet and gold, Sarah Lynn was alone in her palace garden. The air was calm, scented with the blossoms of the silver trees Elias once admired. She often came here to think, to find peace, but that night she felt restless, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Then she heard it. A faint hum, soft at first, growing louder. A ship was landing nearby. She frowned. "Who dares land in the royal gardens?" she muttered, walking toward the sound. The ship's ramp lowered with a hiss. Dust swirled in the air. Out stepped a figure in worn armor, scratched and burned, carrying a small duffel bag. At first, she couldn't breathe. Her heart stopped, her hands trembled. The man raised his head, and even through the scars and dirt, she knew that face. "Elias," she whispered, her voice breaking. He smiled faintly, tired but alive. "Hello, Princess." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the soft sound of leaves. Then she ran forward and stopped just before him, afraid he might vanish like a dream. "How?" she finally asked, tears shining in her eyes. "We thought you died on Alaris. We built a monument for you. Your ship exploded, the scanners found nothing." Elias looked away, his voice low. "It almost did. The reactor blew, but I was thrown clear. The shockwave buried me under the debris. I don't remember much, just pain and light. The Dravok found me first. They took me prisoner." Her eyes widened in horror. "You were with them all this time?" He nodded slowly. 3 years. They wanted to break me, make me talk. But a human's stubbornness is hard to crush. I escaped when their base was attacked. It took me another year to find my way back." Sarah Lynn covered her mouth, unable to hold back her sobs. "You suffered because of us." "No," he said softly, shaking his head. "I fought because of what you became. Because you learned. Because I saw hope in your eyes before the battle." She looked at him, her tears falling freely. We changed because of you. Our people honor you now. They tell stories about the human who taught us humility. Elias smiled faintly. That's good enough for me. But she stepped closer, her voice trembling. No, you deserve more than stories. You deserve peace. Then, without caring about protocol or titles, she wrapped her arms around him. He hesitated, then held her close, the years of pain and silence melting away in that single embrace. I'm sorry, she whispered against his chest, for everything I said. For how I treated you that day. Elias smiled faintly. You don't need to apologize, princess. You became the person I hoped you'd be. She pulled back slightly, her hand brushing the dog tag on her wrist. I wore this every day. I never took it off. He looked down at it, his expression soft. Then I guess I was never really gone. For a long time they stood there in silence. Two souls from different worlds who had once been divided by pride and pain, now united by understanding. Above them, the stars shimmered brightly like witnesses of their journey. Saralyn smiled through her tears. What will you do now? Elias looked toward the sky. I don't know. Maybe stay a while, see what peace looks like. Then stay here, she said quietly. With me. And for the first time in years, Elias Ward laughed. A quiet, warm laugh that filled the night air with life. The war was over. The pain was behind them. And in the gardens of Valoria, under the watchful eyes of 1,000 stars, a human and an alien princess stood side by side, no longer enemies, no longer strangers, but the living proof that humanity's heart could change even the coldest of worlds.